we're going to start. We're going to start with just doing some basic introductions of ourselves. Monica, do you want to be in the introductions? Yeah, so we'll have Monica on as well. Seanice, if you can unmute yourself. So we're going to start off with Seanice. There's so much to talk about Seanice, but I will let her do the introduction of herself. But she's the group CEO of Blu Flamingo Digital Africa. Blu Flamingo is one of those companies I personally worked at. I almost made 1,000 days there. I was only short by 23 days. I only worked there about 967 days. That was about a year ago, but it was a very good place to work. And she was a very good boss. So we're lucky to have you, Seanice. Can you introduce yourself to the rest of people who don't know you as much as I know you?
Absolutely, Robert. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I won't repeat what Robert has said. I'm coming at you live from my car because these are the times we find ourselves in. My study has been taken over by my children who will not play in their playroom, but I have to sneak out to be here. So having said that, I am right now in Johannesburg, South Africa, but obviously Uganda is very near and dear to my heart. That's my hometown. That's my motherland. And I'm looking forward to having a robust discussion about the times we find ourselves in, the evolving landscape when it comes to marketing. And I'm very privileged to be on here with my fellow colleagues. So I look forward to our discussions.
Oh, thank you, Seanice. Yeah. I will have the next person, according to protocol. He's the Vice President of the Uganda Marketers Society, and his name is Frank Fayo Nyakahuma. Quite a hard name there. Frank, please introduce yourself to our guests.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. I don't know what protocol is here, but we shall go with it anyway. My name is Frank Fayo. Definitely glad to be here. John is laughing hard. But I mean, I'm glad to be here. Quite an amazing lineup. John, Seanice, now Monica. A little bit about me. I'm the CEO and co-founder, Hedge Group. Definitely, we are also a digital marketing company since 2013. So we've been around, worked with a number of people, very interesting landscape. Definitely later on, worked with the Uganda Marketers Society, one of the first teams really that worked with the society. Right now working as the vice president. And so as a society, we represent the interest of all professional marketers in the country. And our goal is to try as much as possible to professionalize, the industry of marketing. So that's how, I find myself here. I'm glad to be part of the discussion. It's a very interesting time, just like Seanice said, it's a very interesting time that we live in. So we are looking forward as marketers generally, as companies, as brands, as everyone to see, what the world has for us, what the future has for us. So thank you for having me here. To all our participants, we hope that you have a good time in the next 1 hour. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Frank, for that decent introduction of you and the Hedge. Actually, I didn't introduce the Hedge as well. We'll have John Ssenkeezi, a digital marketing professional. I think I'll not so much about John, but John has mostly been vested in the telecom space. He's worked with about 2 telecom companies, Vodafone and Airtel. Surprisingly, both of them, are color red. John, what's special about color red? And tell us more about yourself today.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Ssenkeezi. A digital marketing professional. Been in the industry for now coming to 9 years. I'm quite passionate about strategy, clients, employers, money's with media buying, and I'm a stickler for reporting at the end of the day. I'm very glad to be here, especially in these COVID times, and looking forward to the deliberation.
All right, thank you. Thank you, John, for that introduction as well. Some ground rules for the rest of us. If you have a question, you can always put up your hand, but we'd prefer to take the questions towards the tail end of the discussion. But if you have a question that is really burning, or you don't have to be burning with it, if you have any question, just put it in the chat section. We'll be able to attend to it while we're discussing. So I'll start with our first question. I'll start with Frank. I don't know why I'm going to start with you, Frank. I think because you're not putting on specs today. So Frank, you probably have better sight than all the other panelists today. So what has tilted about the marketing landscape in the times that we're in?
Well, that's interesting. I think, you know, even beyond the marketing landscape, I think the world has changed really from under our feet. Barely 2 months ago, it was very normal to live in Uganda, for example. It was very normal. It was the normal lifestyle in every country around. But over the last few weeks, we've seen so much, you know, so many things changing. The way people are doing business, the way companies are marketing themselves, the way people, when you go to consumer behavior, you know, the way people are being forced, you know, to consume, whether it's information or daily, you know, life necessities. I'm saying, you know, some of us are working with agencies. Our clients, a lot of our clients had, you know, very well laid out strategies, you know, for the whole year, and all of a sudden everything has been changing, you know, so it's very, very interesting times for us. I think what we are going to see a lot is one, consumer behavior. How are people, you know, are beginning, you know, to consume, like I said, whether it's information, how are people going to look forward into the future. So marketing is changing, just like every other part of business, you know. So we need to brace ourselves for times where, well, there's going to be limited contact, interhuman contact, but technology is going to drive a lot of, you know, our behavior in terms of how, you know, we interact with our clients. If I'm a brand, you know, if we are companies trying to sell something, you know, how are we going to reach out to our customers in these times? You know, for example, in Uganda, we thought, you know, our 14 days of quarantine were going to end. And then surprisingly, you know, so yesterday, the president and the entire crew, you know, decided that we need another 21 days. You know, so if I'm going to be talking to my customers, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What methods, you know, of reaching out am I going to use? So for me, I think that has been the most, in terms of marketing, that has been the most immediate shift. You know, that how are we going to engage our customers as brands? I know for a fact that we are heavily relying on digital, you know, currently, because every other part of marketing well has slowed down. We cannot, you know, hold the physical meetings. We cannot hold the physical campaigns. You know, we cannot hold events. We cannot hold any other promotions. So we are relying on the skill sets of people like John and Seanice, you know, in order to reach out to our clients. So for me, I think the way we interact is the number one, you know, form of the tilt, you know. So the pandemic has definitely had such an impact. You know, business has slowed down generally. I've been lucky to work with brands that have actually been directly affected. Some of my clients are in the banking industry, some of them are in the insurance industry. And today, I mean, I would give an example without really mentioning the brands, but for example, one of my clients is an insurance company, and one of their, you know, biggest products was travel insurance, you know, and you can imagine what has happened to all that, you know, in the recent times. So it's so much has changed. So we are back to the drawing board, you know, as marketers across all industries. You know, for example, in the banking industry, one of my clients is their biggest product is trade financing, you know, and these are guys that this means that they give a lot of money to people who import from China, you know. So you can imagine what has been happening to guys in that industry over the last, you know, 2-3 months. So that is a very interesting twist in the way that as marketers we are doing business today. So I think for me, if you ask for the for the effect, that for me is very key. It's a very huge highlight for us.
Well, that's a very interesting one. I'll try to bring in Seanice on this one. Seanice, was she set up one of the first digital agencies here. So she was the pioneer, founder of digital in Uganda, you'd say. So I really want to know, how's the agency workflow changed as a result of the coronavirus? And now, given that you're actually across different geographies, you're in Uganda, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Kenya as well. So what has changed in your side in the workflow?
Well, a lot has changed. I think as a digital agency, the way we're working today is not foreign to us. We have worked like this in the past. It's very odd, but actually we were moving towards a more, not remote, but a more distributed sense of working. So as an agency, what we had been exploring, and I love that word you used, Robert, about pioneering. I think pioneering is just finding creative ways to do what you've always done and to be more efficient for your clients. So one of the things that we've been really kind of trying to consolidate over the last couple of months was this sort of distributed work format. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the company Zappos. Zappos actually doesn't have any physical offices, and yet it's a $1 billion business. And for us as an agency, because we work with a lot of young people, we realize that millennials in many ways are a lot more mature in some ways than baby boomers when it comes to what, I know that sounds ironic because millennials always get a bad rap, but in certain ways, in terms of the value of their time, in terms of what they want out of life, they want more than just a 9-to-5 sitting at a desk. They want to be judged based on output rather than how much toilet paper and how much solitaire you consume in the office and how much solitaire you can play. So we had actually started thinking of, look, wouldn't it be better if we could do 2 or 3 days in the office and have 2 out of those days working outside of the office, being inspired, as long as you can turn in your work on time. So when COVID hit, it was like, oh, hang on a second, we're just being accelerated into what we were already trying to plan. But I think that now more than ever, not only is business, the economy, and all of that changing, but I'd like to posit that human beings are also changing. And for me, it's actually a positive change. When I look at how we have been working, all the things we think are, and I'm going to use air quotes, normal, weren't actually really normal. Was it normal to spend 3 hours of your day with your children? It wasn't. That doesn't make any sense. Is it normal to chase cars and money and houses ad infinitum at the expense of your health and well-being? No. So, not to be like a preacher or to go into the spiritual realm here, but if you really consider the fact that business and life cannot be separated, right? The reality of it is, as an agency, to be direct with your question, changing the way we live means also carrying our clients along. It means doing a lot of asking of questions, asking people how they want to be marketed to, what kind of products make sense for them. Now more than ever, collaboration is going to be so key and so important. So we've gone to just give you practical ways in which we have changed how we work. We have our daily huddles every day. Every day starts with, a group meeting where we look at what we need to do for our clients. We touch base with our clients weekly on the phone because a lot of them are nervous. They don't know how to navigate the space. But the interesting thing is that we've also got a lot of curiosity, a lot of questions from potential clients who want to come on board, but they don't know the first thing about how to navigate this space. They haven't really thought about it, and they just want advice and hand-holding. So it's not like we're exchanging money, we're reaping lots out of other people's misery. It's really hand-holding and giving advice to customers and consumers who hopefully you can later on turn into clients. So right now, I think it's more thinking about how you can be helpful, but not how you can take advantage of the situation. And I think that's really what's going to set apart businesses that care and businesses that are just thinking about themselves. Now is not the time to think about yourself. Now is the time to think about us as a collective, as humanity, to answer your question in a very long-winded way.
Okay, I hope that covers not almost knocking you down. And then I'll try to bring in John on this one. John, so what has changed about buying media during this coronavirus? thing, especially about digital, because that's where you practice almost on a daily?
It has shifted just like other areas of life, not only marketing and communication, but across the board. We've seen brands cut down on some of their budgets, especially budgets that were pointing towards campaigns that were trying to drive things like usage, acquisition, and upsell. That has been cut down. Then we've also seen some brands actually convert some of their budgets towards the COVID scenario of sensitization, etc. But all in all, competition from a bidding point of view is less now. This is primarily driven by the fact that not a lot of bidding is happening at the moment across the board. Name it Google. You might see lower costs per acquisition now in formerly highly competitive audiences. So from a media buying point of view, budgets have been either redirected or put to a standstill, at the moment halted until things normalize, which to many companies was supposed to be yesterday, until of course we got that 21 days extension. So competition is down, budgets are shrinking, but at least away from just paid, what I can say has been an opportunity for us as digital marketers is all of a sudden we are at the forefront of everything, even in companies where digital was secondary. Everyone is looking to the digital guy to pass on the message, to do either communication about washing hands, sanitizing and all that, or driving e-channels. I believe most of the industries, banks have seen a surge in the usage of their e-channels like e-banking, mobile banking, name it. But then also, I think overall, we won't see this last. I hate to be the devil's advocate. We won't see this last after COVID. I have a suspicion even wins that have been had on the e-commerce space might actually roll back quite substantially after COVID. So yes, we've had some wins, but I wouldn't count my eggs for now.
Okay, that's very interesting to know. I would just want to know what would be the best place you'd want to spend your advertising dollars in this kind of crisis. I think it will go to all panelists, but I'll start with you, John, then we'll close with the rest of the guys.
Surprisingly, one of the most impactful channels, I believe, in this time is one that has been underutilized, and that's really video. First, before where I spend, I think the brand needs to be clear on what it is they're trying to communicate, because I think right now is the time to cut down on acquisition content, which is really the 80 or 70% of most brands online. It's really acquisition. So it's a good place to spend on brand right now, or retention or usage, especially where a brand has some e-channel. So I would spend a lot on video right now. Even from a stakeholder's point of view, we're seeing a lot of communication going out in video formats, and advertising going out on YouTube and other channels like Facebook video, etc. Because aside from the content there being more engaging than what is everywhere, I believe it's a virgin territory first for the market, even before COVID, but especially now that there is COVID. So I'd spend a lot on video, to answer your question, both YouTube and the socials, Twitter, Facebook as well. I would also, spend a lot on remarketing, especially to my customers from a bank. And I've had people, check out my e-channels just out of curiosity. I would heavily spend on a remarketing campaign, for example, to drive usage there, either by display network or social, or I would also more than ever rely on custom audiences. Banks have a lot of KYC data, emails, phone numbers for customers. this is the time to actually put these numbers to use, not only for email marketing, like many have been doing, but also to upload to, say, Google, Facebook for custom audiences, whereby if you have highly targeted communication that is going out to your customers, you kind of have them the primary target of your advertising now, as opposed to them being, swallowed in the crowd. Because again, one of the biggest challenges is how someone can cut through all the noise that's flying around. And from a paid media point of view, remarketing, custom audiences based on your KYC data are all quick wins for brands.
Yeah, very, very good insight there. We recently published a report at Eskimi, and one of the takeaways for the telecom space, we had, we're very sure that based on the data we have from other markets, is acquisition for telecoms are going to go down. And we even have a worse local insight here in Uganda. For you to buy a SIM card today, it will cost you 70, maybe 100,000 strokes of the cane just to walk from your place to ShopRite, because you saw what the LDU gentlemen were doing. So it's a very good insight, and I will be able to share the Eskimi report for the different industries altogether after this call. I will try to bring in Seanice on this one as well, and Frank. Seanice, can you come in? You're in mute. I can mute you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think that if I were to be asked where should I spend my advertising revenue dollars right now, it would really be, and I have to go back to this because I can imagine that on this call, we don't only have people in telco, people in banking, but we might have people in the non-profit, for example, sector. We might have small to medium businesses, agencies, not just services, but other small businesses. So what I would encourage you is to do a deep dive into what it is your business does and what it does well. Not every business is suited to riding the COVID-19 wave. It's just like anything in life. You can't just jump on a trend, or, and I know this is not a trend or a pandemic for lack of a better word, simply because everybody else is doing it. This is where we get into trouble as digital marketers. We do something because somebody else is doing it. If you want to cut through the noise, there's a lot of COVID-19 fatigue right now. Yes, there's a lot of people who want to know what the latest is, what's going on, because it affects them directly in their families and their businesses. But I've seen a lot of people have success by just lifting the darkness, by having positive content rather, by talking about something that will bring hope, that will bring a sense of relief. So let's say you're in you manufacture baby food, right? This is the time to encourage people at home to do fun things with their kids. People are struggling to entertain their children. The struggle is real. So if you can find a way, cutting through the noise means understanding who you are as a brand. No one is going to be able to do that for you except you. So sit down somewhere and ask yourself, am I trying to just be relevant because all my competition is talking about COVID-19, or am I trying to be true to myself as a brand? If you can be true to yourself as a brand, you will cut through the noise effortlessly. The reason is because there's an audience for everybody. Everyone is looking for something. I can assure you gamers are not thinking, how do I ride the COVID-19 wave? They're just gaming, and their audiences are loving it, and they're there and they're engaged. So it's about, you have to ask yourself if you're responding from a place of fear or if you're responding from a place of understanding your brand and actually trying to make a difference. Research this is a great time to do research. So as a digital agency in 5 countries, we asked ourselves, look, how can we best help our customers? We cannot help by making assumptions. We can only help by understanding how we can be helpful. So we also conducted a survey, and we said we release an ebook that has all the results from our survey, and we will give everybody who's actually given us research a chance to advertise their business, because now more than ever, people need ways to get out there. So it's about collaboration. When it comes to video, I would like to perhaps sound a warning. And the warning is that, remember, a lot of, I would say a lot of customers, consumers, audiences in Africa consume their data in their offices because that's where it's affordable. Now we're in an interesting situation where a lot of us are at home, and not all of us can afford data the way we used to. Middle class is a very interesting construct, I find, in Africa that is very misunderstood. So even as we are pushing video, let's remember that the majority of people might not be able to consume video because of data connection issues, because of bandwidth. So there's also something to be said for understanding, how do we push great content and make sure it's, you know, it's not too heavy? Can we use WhatsApp? Can we use other creative ways in which we can reach the audiences that we're trying to engage? So for me, right now, your spend should first and primarily be informed by your strategy. Too many of us rush to tactics first rather than putting strategy first. So the strategy needs to be one where you sit down, you involve your teams, you involve experts if you can, reach out. A lot of agencies are doing pro bono work now because this is the time. And let's inform your strategy first, and then you can actually make a lot of sense of whatever digital media spend you have.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I have some insight to share with maybe the rest of the guys on the call. So at Eskimi, we do what we do when we're doing a lot of, when we're targeting for video, we try to target to people who are using a 4G connection. We also try to target people who are using a Wi-Fi connection. Or we also try to target people who are heavy data users, because we have a data segment of heavy data users on our platform. So we make sure we position the videos just to those guys who would ideally want to watch video. And also we look at the price of the handset. So you're not going to, I don't know if you all see my phone here. So we have, you know, almost entry-level phones, you know, those smartphones that are really not really smart. So a guy like that would have trouble, you know, watching your video content. So we try to send that kind of video content to the right segment. I hope that doesn't sound like an Eskimi ad, but it's a lot of one of the insights that we give some of the people that we work with. Frank, I want to bring you on this. What's your take?
Well, first of all, you'll pay us for the Eskimi ad. But anyway, I think the two, John and Seanice, really highlight key important key messages. You know, I think for me, I would focus a lot on messaging. You know, I would focus a lot on messaging. Today, people are looking for someone that would understand them from where they're coming from. Everyone is in shock in a certain kind of way. So if you are a brand that is trying to reach out to your audience, you know, whether you're spending on advertising or not, the messages that you're sending out are also going to be very important. How do we encourage people, you know, to reach some kind of, to feel like they're in a normal situation, even if it's hard? You know, I think that's what a lot of our clients are struggling with right now. Everyone is shocked. Everyone is trying to find a new way of living, you know, of accepting the situation. So as a company or as a service provider, one of the things, as much as yes, you want to, you know, you want people to know you're still selling, you want people to know you're still available to offer services. I think customers today just want to feel like every service provider understands them from their point of need. Seanice talked about, you know, affordability of internet, for example, you know, if you're going to use video, that John had suggested. But of course, we've seen a lot of telecom companies right here in the country trying to come up with all these products, you know, that can be eventually affordable. It is an interesting mix, you know. Like you said, a lot of people access internet while they're at work, you know, but also on the contrary, if you look around, I mean, a lot of your WhatsApp groups, there's more video content going around right now, either a father dancing with his kids or someone, whatever it is. So I think it is to find a balance. You know, it is to find a balance. I will agree with John on one thing, that video content consumption is really on the rise, you know. And I think, you know, from my experience in the last 3-4 weeks, personally as a consumer, I'm looking to more video content usually because, you know, I want to laugh, I want a certain kind of distraction, you know, and for the brands that have actually, you know, started doing some of those things, are also now, you know, they're trying to lighten up the mood. But I will, again, like Seanice said, you can't just jump on it. You know, you can't just jump on the bandwagon because people are doing this, you know, push-up challenge. let our MD also do a push-up challenge because the president did it. I think that there's need to be more thought. While the people, while our consumers want fun, with the people that actually create the content, we have to put a lot of thought to it. Because depending on the brand, I would give again an example. If my brand is an entertainment brand, there's a certain kind of content that even my consumers will be happy to see. But yet, if it's the same content from an insurance angle or a banking angle, it would look weird, so we need, to always be, cognizant of the fact that people are not just out there, to consume everything. They also put, and that's why you realize, for me, some of the platforms I'm on, whenever a brand does something, people come back and talk about it. But was it right? Was it the right thing to do? Was it the right time to put it? And so all the things have to be, put in consideration while you're creating, the engagement. So for me, that would be.
But inside, I personally, during this whole social distancing thing, I've got a new bag of, watching TikTok videos every time I'm free. I've had a very busy schedule, but in the night, 1 a.m. in the night, I'm going through TikTok. Before I know it, it's 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning. So TikTok I'm one of those video consumers. Yeah. So Seanice, I want to bring you on this one too. You hinted on it earlier, but I felt like you didn't give it the right punch. So I want you to be a Muhammad you need to know. What are some of those no-go areas for brands right now?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think no-go areas for me right now is selfish marketing. Selfish marketing that is not adding value. I think the golden rule for digital applies now more than ever. Give first before you receive. Frank, I think it was, spoke about, yes, no, you shouldn't just jump on a bandwagon, but what is it that you are an authority on? So let me give you an example. If you're in the finance sector, you're obviously an authority on money. Money is a huge concern for businesses and people right now. I'm not a finance person. I get inundated with questions like, should I pay my employees half pay until this is over? They've just extended by 21 days. When will this thing end? So if you're in the finance sector, just think to yourself, if you're an insurance company, use what you have, the knowledge that you have, to create really helpful information, really helpful content that people can look at and say, oh, this is how I do a business continuity plan. This is how I plan for eventualities. This is how I do my strategic plans and my financing week on week, because right now we can't do monthly budgets or annual budgets anymore. That's out of the window. Now we're looking at weekly budgets. That's such a new normal, right? But people don't know how to do this. People are struggling. And by people, I mean your customers, your clients, or even your potential customers after this. So I think the question to ask, the no-go for me, is content just for the sake of content. And Frank put it beautifully. Your MD has no reason to do push-ups if you're a bank.
He may actually faint on the way. You don't want another catastrophe.
My trigger is underlying issues, or God knows what. So it's really important to think about relevance, but relevance in the content of, again, let's think about the audience, not about yourself. This is the time for brands to be selfless. Yesterday, I had a conversation with, so we also do a lot of telco work, and I had a conversation with one of my clients here in South Africa, because we actually do a bit of research and consulting for one of the big telco brands here. And he said, do you know what our biggest concern is right now? Our biggest concern is that the government is going to come and tell us that data is now a national right and it should be absolutely free, because it's now something that people should access as freely as water. Because how do people get communication? How do people get medicine delivered? How do people get groceries delivered if we're doing online deliveries? They have to have data. And if they don't have data, it becomes a national issue of national security. These are the things that people are concerned about. So in your own space, ask yourself, what is my customer worried about? If you don't know, then ask. Conduct your research, call 3 or 5 of your top customers and clients and find out from them, and then work backwards. So the no-go area for me is, no one has an excuse right now not to be relevant. That for me is a no-go. If you care enough, do your homework and you will find that you are being relevant.
Thank you, Seanice, for that. This is the part where I would actually, if we're still on radio, then I'm sure you'll be playing some drum rolls here and there. I'll bring in John here. John, how do you measure digital media performance during a time of crisis? Or how would you measure it? Because this is not the usual crises that we used to. Someone hacked your pages. It's more than that. So how would you measure this?
I think the parameters won't really shift that much even now. For as long as the brands stay relevant. Just to add to Seanice's point, I think there is a lot of pressure, especially from big corporations, to keep churning out content. But if the content is not relevant, you're actually better off falling into the other category that is silent for now until you figure things out. So I think right now, measurement of digital is going to be mostly on two fronts if we are to limit ourselves to the COVID situation. One is, I think for now, social listening, sentiment are very important. You need to keep a pulse on what your customers are saying about your brand. And then if you know what they're saying, is it a positive sentiment, a negative sentiment? That's very important to keep tabs on now. But then also, if you have some channels that are still actively being used, some e-channels are, talk about some small businesses that are perhaps, doing door-to-door deliveries using their WhatsApp for business. Talk about, the players who have e-commerce, the guys who do online banking, etc. Now is the time to actually look at the uptake of these channels. So away from just the vanity KPIs, what is the uptake bringing to the business? Yes, Seanice and other speakers said businesses should not be looking at the money primarily now. They should look at the concern, but at the end of the day, especially during these times, businesses actually still have to stay afloat. So if you can stay afloat in a way that does not position you to be an extortionist, so to speak, then go for it. Because if you can enhance people's processes now, right now, you can see I'm getting an offer that I didn't sign up for. If there is a solution to that, provide the solution. If I'm struggling with deliveries, provide the solution. I think that's a good way to make money. And from a business measurement point of view, I would look at, bottom line for such channels, but then also the social listening and the sentiment side of things. But also away from measurement, I think this is the time when businesses need to be as responsive as possible to their channels, either messages, emails, chats, etc., because customers are not in position to actually do, branch visits, etc. I was talking to two of my bankers, and I wanted to access my statements over a certain period of time. They have an e-banking platform that couldn't take me beyond a certain, historical range. And when I wrote to them on email, they were telling me to visit a branch. I was like, I think these guys are operating from a different country. So I think also from a processes point of view, there is need for flexibility and also businesses being willing to lend a hand out of the ordinary, because of course COVID-19 is unprecedented, so we can't do the usual, holding responses and all of that stuff that corporates throw out there. So I think from a measurement point of view, to answer your question, sentiment, social listening, just for you to understand what the pulse is and for you to refine what your strategy and communication will be, and also being useful to your customers. And if you can lend a hand to the wider, audience, then go for it.
Yeah, Seanice, I'm bringing the ball back to you because John threw a ball your way. So I just want you to close up with this, but also while you're doing that, I'd want you to respond to this. What may be the lasting impact of the COVID crisis for brands? While you come in on this. Frank, you'll also come in after Seanice.
The lasting impact on COVID. So anyone who tells you they have the answer to that, I want them to be my friend, because we're living in such unprecedented times. Nobody's got a magic crystal ball here. And unfortunately, the book has not been written. And I'll tell you why I say that. I'm currently enrolled for my MBA with Stanford University. And I love it because it's not just me as a leader, but also my executive team who get to benefit from this. And obviously, when COVID hit, travel was canceled, so we couldn't travel to study anymore. But they assured us, don't worry, we've got this, we'll do everything online. So we continued to do the modules online until yesterday, when they realized that the material they're teaching us now might not be relevant next year. Now, this is Stanford University, so you can imagine the amount of data they have to be able to make a decision like that. So if they know that what they're teaching us in terms of business transformation and business leadership on the continent today might be obsolete tomorrow, it means that they have to go back and revise their content and say, okay, this is what we think the new world is going to look like. So just using that as an example, it means that the lasting impact of COVID-19 is one we're all going to create together. But one thing I can say is I think people are going to remember. People are going to remember the companies that use this time to enrich themselves. And I completely agree. If you can make money during this time, go for it. If you can do it in a way that's helpful, in a way that's sensitive. We all remember the picture of the guy who said that he's quarantined on his, I don't know how many 50 feet long private boat, right? That was tone deaf. People are struggling. People don't have enough money. And this guy is posting a picture of him on his boat, on his yacht, living it up, saying that he is quarantined, you know, he's in self-quarantine. So understanding the emotion of people, because we like to think we're practical beings, but actually emotion drives us a lot more than practicality. This is why someone will drive 10 kilometers for a fuel discount, right? Of which he's already used that discount driving there. You get what I mean? But it's the reptilian brain that makes us think that we are rational, but we're not. So people are not going to forget the brands that had their backs during this time. And that's important. That's what's going to become the new normal. This is where people's loyalties are going to lie, right? Airlines are repurposing themselves to deliver medicine rather than people in cargo, right? Because that's what's needed right now. Airbnbs are turning themselves into quarantine hotels where people can go and quarantine themselves. So everybody is looking for a way to be, not just to make money, but to actually help in this time of need. So if a telco right now decides to slash data costs to a point for the next 2-3 months where it's absolutely free, do you know what? When life returns to a sense of normalcy, these are the companies we will remember. So ask yourself if it makes sense for you to make a killing in the short run and not be relevant later on, or if you want to still be relevant later on and continue providing value for your customers. So for me, what it looks like after COVID is something we're going to be creating together. But let's make sure that as we are creating that new reality or that new normal, that we can look back and be proud of the companies we were during this crisis, not just after it.
All right, thanks for that very good submission. I see you've bumped my question, so it can't even move around, not to anyone, unless we have a magician on the call. So I'll move on to the next question. What opportunities do you foresee, or do you see have opened up? Frank, this will go to you. Do you see have opened up in the digital space?
Well, I think for me, again, sorry, I was looking forward to adding on to Seanice's.
You can add on. You can add on.
But I think for me, the lasting impact. Yeah, when you look at the list, even the participants here, the attendees, not every one of us, is the brand or is a company owner. Some of us are employees. And we are worried what is going to happen, to our jobs after all this. Are we going to be retrenched? Are we going to be, what's going to happen? And for me, the interesting part, is if I am an employee, which I am, and then I would give an example. If, for example, the company I work for, if it's a bank, somehow anyway, we've kept, running back to banks and all these guys. You've noticed that a lot of these institutions in the last 3 weeks have actually been able to serve an almost equal number of customers with a dramatically less number of employees at the workplace. So it means that the future of employment right now is I can't say people are going to lose their jobs, but for me it would be it is something that I've been thinking about like all this time. So what's going to happen to the 30 employees who are serving 1,000 clients, and now their companies are serving the same number of clients with less than 5? What's going to happen? So I think as people in the employment world, we need to really check ourselves in terms of the skill sets that we are developing, in terms of the things that we are studying, whether they are relevant. I mean, just like Seanice said, so it's going to shift. You've seen globally, I mean, countries and companies have they're either following or actually dropping off people. So we need to ask ourselves, beyond this, what is going to happen to human resource? What's going to happen to, and it's all technology, So I want to, I want to say that if I am an employee of an organization, any organization, big or small, I need to use this time to check myself. Am I relevant, to that organization? Am I relevant, to their goals, to their vision? If I'm not, then what do I need to do? Because let's face it, guys, it's not going to be rosy. Guys are going to start refocusing their strategies. I can imagine what strategy directors are doing right now, what what human resource directors are doing right now as well. So I think for me that is going to hit hard. I pray that we are in the right place to be able to still be employable, to still be relevant, in that particular space of time. So for me, I think that really is going to be very key. What was the other question again? Apologies, I had to put that in. Yeah.
No, so actually you tackled a bit of that question. So I'll ask the next one. So we see there's not a lot of differentiation on what brands are doing. Brand A donates a certain amount of money to the COVID crisis. Brand B, C, D, F. I'm trying to say so many letters so people don't end up thinking I'm talking about C and P, right? So what kind of differentiation can be done at the moment? Because if you think everyone is basically doing the same thing, this one donates. I'm struggling with this, jerry cans. And then another one donates trucks,
masks and all that.
Yeah, so I know the jerry can example really hits home, so we can all relate. So what can brands do differently today? Frank, this is for you.
Well,
and the UMF member, I expect you to tread on eggshells, but give us the right insight here.
No, I'll be frank, just like it goes. I think, these are very, very, very strange conversations that we've had in the Uganda Marketers Society platforms across, and we've argued and people have, but I think for me, as much as a lot of brands are doing this for PR, and so I mean, so the size matters really. The guy that gives $100,000 feels, could feel is more important than the guy that has given 10,000. Of course, financially he is, but let's be human a bit. I think if you are asking, and I've shared this even with my clients, other than we have real people that have no food. We have real people that have no food. In the neighborhood where I stay, just on the side of the ghetto right here, I mean, there is a lot of people that have no food, So if I put on my hedge t-shirt, and then went by with 5 kgs of rice and, took a picture with 5 kgs of rice, well, it could be nice PR, but is it humanity? I think let's bring back humanity before PR. In all this, let's help, man. I don't. Yesterday we had a very long meeting with one of my clients, and we were asking ourselves, do you want, to be seen as a guy that has given, or do you want to give so that someone is better? I think for me, I would go for It doesn't matter, you know, right now, I think strategy, it's very important. I'm not saying people shouldn't do it, but I think let's help. Let's just help, you know, let's make sure your potential client 2 years from now is safe today so that they will be your client 2 years from now. So as much as it's important to drive, you know, all these tactics around what different thing I should do, I think we all agree in this pandemic, or the most people are most affected in two ways. Either because people are not working, so they can't buy a lot of food, so they need food, you know, or when you look at it on the other way, we have a lot of medics that have no gear, PPE, you know, protective gear. So if I can give to that cause, it is okay. Whether we can't be, John has a budget of 100,000 that he can give. I have a budget of 5,000. You know, so I don't have to fight, you know, with John in terms of where should I put so that I be seen and John is not seen. I think for me, let us, and everyone that is listening in, everyone that is listening to us, whatever you can do, however small it is, I think I would employ people to simply just be a part of this without spending a lot of time in the boardroom trying to find the best way to achieve mileage, you know, out of this. So for me, that is my take, really. That is my take.
That's a good one. So at this point, because we're running out of time, I want to hear from the audience. So we have Fiona Biarogaba and David Balikudembe. I'll be bringing you on shortly after getting feedback from Seanice. So be on alert. I'll be unmuting your mics. So Seanice, what's your take here?
Thanks, Robert. Would you like me to respond to the question Frank has responded to, or Fiona?
Yes. Oh, no, on what Frank has been responding to.
Okay, in terms of PR. I think, you know, Frank has really said what needed to be said on that. It's really about...
No, it was about differentiation, because basically every brand is doing the same thing. So
right.
how differently can brands do stuff, you know?
Right.
Because everyone is doing the same thing.
I think I've kind of already answered this one as well earlier. I touched on the fact that every brand is good at something. If you're in the banking sector, you know your numbers. If you are a business coach, you know what you're doing. If you sell clothes for babies, that's your niche. And again, not every business can lend itself to relevance in COVID-19. Neither should every business try and insert itself into some sort of relevancy in just to be heard or just to be seen. There was a question that was asked earlier about what about brands who are not saying anything? Maybe they have nothing to say, you know. It's really a good idea to keep quiet if you've got nothing to add to the conversation, if you've got nothing of value to add. Having said that, I do think that most people can have value and can add value at this time because we're all part of a society and all of us are important. So there is that. So I think it boils down to understanding what your customer is asking. For example, if I had to run a survey, one of the questions I would definitely ask is, if you were to hear from, insert your company, a brand, a textile company, a food company, what's the kind of information you would like to hear? And let's put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. What kind of information would I like to be receiving right now from Airtel? Is it being asked to download data? No. The kind of information I'd like to receive from Airtel or MTN or any telco right now would be, guess what? You can now save 50% on your data costs with this new package that we have given you to help you along. We know things are tough, meaning that they are putting themselves in my shoes. So I do think that at the end of the day, it has to be in line with what you do as a business, what you're good at, the information that you have, and then take that and join the conversation in a manner that is helpful. I think that's how we really create differentiation, is by bringing what only you can bring to the table.
Yes, David, please pass on your question.
Yeah, thanks, Eskimi, and thanks to John and Seanice. I have two questions quickly. The first one is, we've all mentioned at some point the need to do research to inform strategy going forward. My question is, if you do a study right now, are the insights likely to be influenced by the current situation? And if so, would they be relevant in the long term, or they can only inform short-term tactical decisions? The second question is, as digital strategists, what are the 3 top research questions that you would say that if I got accurate answers to them, they would help me design a responsive and great digital strategy? Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Interesting question, David. I'll just jump in really quickly. If I had, I'll take your second question, which is the 3 things I would ask. So one, I would definitely ask what your customer is currently happy to spend on. This is a good way to understand where people's spending thoughts are. Because right now I can tell you most people are happy to spend on food, electricity, water, the essentials, right? But they're probably not thinking of a lot of luxury goods, etc. But this would help you understand how to be relevant to your customer in a digital strategy where you can actually say, okay, these are tips to help you conserve your food, or how to make, you know, matoke last that much longer. I don't know, whatever it is that your customer is actually concerned about. The second one I would say is, what's the top concern at the moment? For some people, it's health. They're really, really worried about the cost of medicine. You'll be surprised. Some people, obviously, there's quite a lot of people who are pregnant right now. And a big concern is how will the hospitals look after me? Is there, you know, is there enough facilities? So so different people have different concerns. And I think answering the concern question helps you create relevant content. And the last one would be, of course, what kind of information are you looking for from a company like ... So if your client is an insurance company, if your client is, I don't know, even in the travel industry, you know, what kind of information would they be looking for from a company like that? They might want to know, you know, what's travel going to look like after this? Are we all going to be wearing 3D goggles and going to Hawaii via virtual reality? This could be a thing. This could be a burgeoning industry. If we can't get into a plane and fly there, maybe I can sit in my car, put on some goggles, and I'm at the beach, right? So there's ways to kind of pivot. And the first question in terms of, does the data now skew what you are going to be doing long term? Is it short term? I think the answer to that is it depends. It depends on the kind of questions you're asking, because a lot of pundits are saying that there is no return to normal. They're saying that washing hands and physical distancing, not social distancing, because let's face it, we're all on social media more now than ever before, right? So physical distancing might become a real thing. It might be that classrooms are not allowed to be more than 5 students. That might be a reality going forward until God knows when. So I don't think that the data will necessarily be skewed. I think you can still use it to be relevant in the future. It depends on the kind of questions you're asking. And I think you need to also do scenario planning of short-term, mid-term, and long-term. So some of your questions need to be the kind of questions that can help you with the long-term scenario, and some would be the kind of questions that will help you in the short term. So I hope that answers your question.
I believe it does. We have Fiona as well. Unfortunately, John, but David got off the session, probably accidentally. So we'll have to carry this message to him in a physical world. Fiona, what do you have for us?
Hi, thanks everyone. I know we're running out of time, so I'll be really quick. So in taking the great suggestions that you've made during this whole session, what would you say are some practical tips that have helped you, that you think would be helpful to cut through all of the noise, you know, to get out this message, that positive message that we want to get out there? Because it feels like there's so many people who are trying to do something similar, but we also have to keep in mind that our audiences are quite overwhelmed with on-demand information that they get quite easily. Now there's YouTube, there's even on WhatsApp, some people are becoming really smart with the way that they are sending out this content. So how do you cut through that noise? Yes, you've got your content together, you understand the scenario, you're trying not to be tone deaf. Every one of your boxes is ticked except for that one, you know, how do you cut through the noise?
Okay. So Seanice, you can take that, and John, while I want to show us something from Eskimi that we've been doing. So I'll share my screen right after the talk.
John, do you want to go first? I don't want to hold you.
Yeah,
Okay,
John can
cool.
go on that. John can go on that, yeah.
Cool. So her question is, how do you cut through the clutter at this point in time? It goes back to the earlier submission. Right now, everyone is trying to be relevant from a generic point of view. Has to exercise a bit, move out of the house once in a while, and that kind of thing. Where I think as a brand, you can be relevant and in turn cut through the noises to churn out content that speaks to your kind of audience before anyone else. Because right now, I think we are looking at the COVID audience, sorry to call it that, in Uganda, in its entirety. We are forgetting that the primary recipients of our communication should be our customers, both existing and the ones that fall into who we are targeting at the end of the day. So I think one of the ways is to, like hints given by Seanice earlier on, to churn out content that is relevant to your brand, that speaks to your brand's DNA at the end of the day, aside from the generic content that is flying around. So also, I think from a format point of view, there is an opportunity for relevance there as well. I know there is a bit of holdback in terms of heavy formats like video, but again, consumption habits even before COVID-19 tell us that much of YouTube is actually not much, over 60-70% of YouTube is consumed on mobile devices. So there is a lot of, even the rise of TikTok, the videos that are flying around. Before this, I wasn't taking it as a serious channel, so to speak. I was just monitoring it like another Snapchat there in the corner. But now everyone is TikTok. And it's a heavy platform from a content point of view. So I think cutting through the clutter will speak to, first of all, the relevance of the content to your brand and its audience, first before anything else, but then also a variation in terms of the content formats and the way you communicate from a tactical point of view would ideally also go a long way. Also, I think one of the easiest fits for me always would be the paid side of things, because one, a lot of content right now is riding on organic growth. So the noise is really kept to a lean circle of people. If you look at the people who are commenting on the stuff, it's almost the same people from time to time. So you need to break out from just the small bubbles that have been created around content, and you reach out to new eyeballs at the end of the day. And one of the surest ways to do that, although there are so many other organic ways of achieving that, is to have a highly targeted paid campaign. Eskimi does a good job at geo-targeting at this point in time. I think that has shifted quite a lot now, where people are spending time at 9 a.m. is totally different from where they were spending time at 9 a.m. Before COVID. So if you could also find times when your audience is online and then communicate during those times as opposed to when they are offline, then I think it could help your brand cut through the clutter.
Yes, sorry, Robert, just before you jump in, can I just, 2 seconds, because I actually know Fiona personally, so now I feel like I have to. I'm just gonna send you something on the chat really quickly, but if I can, I just want to more than ever say that SEO is really, really important right now. If you look at all the industry reports, SEO is actually getting an increase in budget simply because people need to refine their audiences even more and optimize their content even more. So SEO is really good. Update your feed every day. Look at the different kinds of media that I think John has alluded to this a little bit, that can be relevant. This is the time to also, I know it sounds weird, but this is the time to network even more than before. And we can still network, whether it's through WhatsApp chats, through phone calls, etc. Find your tribe, because now more than ever, it's going to be important to really crystallize your tribe, find your tribe and give them the relevant, engaging content. So I've just sent you a quick link, lineup on the chat. But if you want to chat through it more, you're free to get in touch with me, and we can have like a 15 minutes, no obligation chat through strategy.
Yeah, so we worked on a couple of formats. I don't know if you're seeing my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you see the rich media creatives on my screen? Because you could be seeing something else that I may not want you to see, probably. Yeah, so we have we worked on a couple of rich media, creatives for the COVID period, and not surprisingly, because we know that, but to our clients' surprise, they really, really worked well, and they've helped them cut through the clutter. So the first one we did was it's a rotating billboard ad, so it's really very basic. From the beginning, you have the message, then someone can engage with it to scroll through to see the different ways. This is really good because most of the clients have the usual static images. We also had one of these where you're able to show more than one message. So normally people have those banners that are really static, and for them to change them, they'll have to do another ad, and they won't be able to catch the same exact audience that they probably missed to catch. So that's a 3D rotating cube. We also have this one, which is a swipe to learn kind of thing. So you can basically roll it, and then you're able to get different messages. And this one has also really worked well in terms of people actually pay attention to it. It's a dancing ad. So you're visiting a website and then you see it, it catches your eye to move away from the content. And the beauty of all this is if you look at, like Seanice was mentioning about keywords, you can decide not to run away from the topic of COVID. And so you decide to target people who are visiting, people who are content that's rotating around the keywords of COVID, epidemic, coronavirus, lockdown, and the like, and then you have the right message in the right time for such a person to see. We also worked on, I think, quite very easily. It's a mini chatbot where someone is able to to take an assessment of online, and then we display a special message. How old am I? Actually, I'm 29. So you're able to do that. It has the kind of it has really integrated with who has been talking about as the right guidelines, and then you're able to see all that. So now this is not the usual content that a brand will be pushing, because normally you're going to just say buy a data bundle 1 GB at 500 shillings. We wish it would be that price though. So something like that. But this kind of a content, people have really liked it, and we're seeing a good number of our customers that get to spend more. So what it's showing to us is that budgets actually not getting cut. Budgets that speak to the right insight of the client and the users are getting increased. So that's what we are seeing. I just wanted to share that because John hinted on it. Very shortly, if I can get back to you, because we're losing a little bit of time. So we're going to ask the very final question, and this is one of those not really hard questions, but it's something that if I left this call without asking it, we'll have a revolt in Kampala, or we'll have a lot of people on the streets not social distancing. So I want to really know from each one of you, if you were given the 4 billion government budget that was passed recently, about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, a week ago actually, where would you spend it? It was about COVID awareness. Where would you spend it? What channels would you use it? For the interest of this call, in case it's not Eskimi, please just call it a platform. Probably if it's a social networking site, just a social networking site, this and that. I'm sorry I have to do this because in the interest of our listeners, because they really want to hear from Eskimi as well. So you can just say the channel. You can say the channel and how you would spend it on that platform. We'll start with you, Frank, being an industry vice president. So we want to hear from you first, and then we'll do John, and lastly, Seanice.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. Well, that 4 billion really caused a lot of stir if anyone had what was happening, from billboards to everything else. But I think it's an interesting one. I think for me, the first question I would ask is, what is the biggest need? When you look at communication needs around COVID, I think we've been lucky as a country and indeed globally that I think when you look at such cases from, say, government side, media has come in already to help. A lot of the news or a lot of the things that government should be saying to the people. I mean, a lot of media houses are doing it already for free. So you wouldn't have to spend a lot of time and money on that. I think I would try to find people at their comfort, you know, which is digital, definitely. So a lot of it, I would say, will spend it on creating content that is going to be primarily consumed on digital. I would also try to be very positive, really, while this, telling people what's happening. In a way, I think one of the things I've noticed around, especially even the way the president gives his, daily updates, he tries to calm the nerves of people. So I think for me, that would be a very important thing right now, to try and create messages that are calming. So I would definitely go digital, because, one of the things that hit me yesterday, and I wish I would ask the question to guys like New Vision, how are they selling newspapers, for example? If you put an ad in New Vision or Monitor, what's happening? Are they making any sales? So I think, but yet globally, when you look at where a lot of people are spending in ads, it's news sites. News sites have actually almost tripled in terms of budget. Why? Because everyone knows that's where clients are running. They want to hear what's happening. They want to see what's happening. So yeah, I think I would go really digital in terms of more specific targeting. I would, spend a little bit more on news sites for me, and then followed by probably entertainment. From what I see, from the trends I've seen, I think that's where much of it would go. But anything offline, I think I would spend the least right there, because people are not reading papers as much. People are probably, I don't know if people are really watching TV other than the presidential updates. That I do not have the stats, but I would assume probably, yeah. So maybe I would consider a little bit of TV for those times when they're not giving us updates. So yeah.
Okay, John, what about you? What's your take here?
Okay, so when that money was in the press, the interesting thing was that the channel that was under a lot of scrutiny was out of home, the billboards that that were being talked about. If I were in a place where it's a decision that is driven by me, I would essentially, I think right now we need to examine what the key challenges are for the country and for brands, and one of them is really misinformation and also the lack of information. So I would ideally, if we are to go 360, I would spend some good money on resolving some of the existing challenges. One of the challenges I've realized is there are these toll-free lines that were set up by the authorities, where if you feel you have to be tested, or if you have any COVID suspicions or concerns, if you've traveled, etc., you actually call. And from all the feedback, most of it, 80-90% I've seen on that initiative, is that these numbers are never responded to at all. So I would think of empowering the call center, using some of that money, because call centers and what we've seen in telcos, in banks, is that call centers are one of the biggest call center drivers. They drive the biggest interaction between brands and customers or the public out there. That in spite of having a really robust self-service, chain of tools and all these e-channels, people always call in. So some of the money would go to call center and empowering it to be, sufficient enough to provide the information and to attend. I would invest in an IVERA maybe to handle the normal queries, and then switch to agent at a time where it is absolutely necessary. Then also, there is a misconception that digital social media is a millennial thing. Statistics have proved otherwise over time. Plus also the fact that much of the communication that is circulating now is actually on digital, either social media, but especially WhatsApp. So I would invest some of the money in programmatic. I would invest some of this money in video, because this is where the eyeballs are at this point in time. And also some paid partnerships from a content generation point of view. If you cannot generate the content, you can have someone who can generate publish, and then I just amplify.
Yeah, so we've also, on our side, we've seen a big surge in traffic to news sites and stuff like that. But also just feedback here. The print media, the print versions of the newspapers now are being given away online for free of charge. That's what they're left with. Unfortunately, they're keeping them locked up in PDFs. I hope we'll onboard some of them as publishers on the Eskimi platform, so they have another channel, monetizing their content and as well as reaching the right people. I will bring in Seanice, and then we'll have our last question. We've had a big complaint on the chat. Some SME people feel left out, not like really left out, but they just want to hear your beautiful voices talking about, how you can help the small guy, like they're calling themselves. So Seanice, you'd help me do, answer 2 in 1 before we can say bye to the rest of the guys. Also, the SME in Uganda, I know the SME in Joburg could afford maybe $1 million here and there.
No, not at all, Robert. So I won't repeat what's been said. I think platforms, definitely I would spend money on research. WhatsApp seems to be a great channel. Social Bakers just released a very interesting report that showed that the one social media platform most people are going to for news on COVID-19 is Facebook, which I find very interesting. So I think research is really important to make sure that your money is where people are. So I won't repeat what John has said. In terms of the question on the SMEs, I believe that's the question surrounding how do SMEs stay relevant and what do they do during this time. There was a great question from Mobiru Moses. I believe that's the one you're referring to, Robert?
Yes, yes.
And we talked about smaller brands and smaller companies. Take a small scale video maker, boutique shop, air conditioner dealing, some practical advice for ourselves in terms of how do we stay relevant during this time. I think the question wasn't completed to the end, so I'll just extrapolate.
No, so we have Moses on. He can ask this question fully. Moses, can you complete your question so we can get this fully done?
Robert, thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Yes.
My particular question is, when you guys have been discussing, I've been getting a lot of content from the angle of the bigger brand. And if I was a bigger brand, there is a lot of stuff I would walk away with from this conversation. My specific question is, now for us, I can't say that I'm really a solopreneur. I'm really not below and I'm not really up. I'm somewhere there in the middle. Right now, you see my 5 guys, they're all home, on agreement that, there are no salaries this time around because we are not working. And I'm sort of a consultancy, and people are wondering, people are sending in these questions. They're wondering, Moses, how do we continue? Should we continuously advertise? Should we continuously communicate? What should we be saying? I mean, it's clear no one is allowed to get into the city. No one is allowed to get into offices, not even in your private car. So my question is that what are some of those practical tips for people like us who are not really at the top and we are not at the bottom, but somehow in that middle ground, So that I would love to pick a few practical advice from you. What should we be doing right now? And specifically, my business is in the area of communication.
Okay, so Moses, before Seanice comes in, I'll just drop in my number as well. So I'll share my number so we can have this conversation further, and the rest of the guys who feel you are in Moses's big, small, middle shoes, right? He said moderately big shoes. So we'll be able to have a conversation on this, but I'll let Seanice take it because she has some feedback for you. And that's our very last question. So we'll be saying bye to all of you after this question.
So I'm passionate about small to medium businesses. The first thing I will do for you is there was an amazing ebook that was published here in South Africa. It's called The Small Business Guide Survival to COVID-19. So Robert, if you would allow me to share it with you, perhaps you can also share it with everybody who's who might want or benefit from that little guide. This is a fantastic time to sit down and also strategize about your business, to look at what you can be doing, to look at any areas that you may have ignored or neglected. Yesterday, during one of my clients had a workshop in South Africa, just dealing with how small businesses can actually move forward during this time. And the first thing he started by saying is that this is the time to invest in yourself. Don't put yourself down, because I have colleagues and friends who are running huge factories, and those factories have had to close because they have massive overheads. You are at an advantage because you're a lean business. You don't have massive overheads. You are a consultancy. You have a team of 5 who relatively you can pick up and continue once all of this is over, or once we're back to some semblance of normalcy. So in a way, there are some pros for you right now, even though you may not have sat to actually delve into what those pros are. What I would say practically is this is the time to sell like hell. Now, I know earlier on I had stressed the fact that you have to sell in a way that is helpful. This is the time to actually look for businesses that could benefit from your consultancy efforts. You know how to communicate really well. This is the time to sit down and draft a small PDF that helps small businesses like yourself communicate during the time of COVID-19. Take what you do best and create small, useful pieces of content that you can put out there, because this is how you now start to reach people who say, you know what, I may not have a lot of money, but I could give you maybe 500,000 if you can help me draw up a strategy. The same way you're looking for advice, there's a lot of people looking for the advice that you are good at during this time. So the internet is your friend. Sit with your team, come up with different ideas on how you can be helpful. This is the time to look for packages that you can sell as a business. Say, you know what, we are giving a huge subsidized package on marketing and communication strategies for the next 3 months. Throwaway price of, I don't know what a throwaway price would be to you, but you determine that. And when you put this out there, you'll be surprised how many people will be willing to take it up. And now it becomes a numbers game. You might get 10, 15 people who are saying, yes, I will sign up for that, you know, online course or online webinar where you can teach me how to communicate during this time, you having done your research, right? So it goes back to how you can be helpful, how you can find a way to harness digital during this time and still be relevant, and just make sure that the planning and strategy that goes into it, you're giving it your best, because you now have downtime between you and your team to work this out. So don't look at this as a time to sit back and say, I have no ideas, I can't do anything about this. You have the internet, you have your laptop, you have your brain, you can sit down, create different packages, and simply repurpose what you were doing anyway in a way that it can be accessible online during this time. So I hope that helps, but I'm really happy to, I have shared my email address if you want to reach out. Again, no obligations. We'd love to see how we can support you. My team in Uganda is happy to also sit with you and have a chat. So we're in it together, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I'll use this chance to let you guys, you know, share with us how can these people reach you right after this call. You can reach me on, you know, my email, very active. I'm almost as good as a bot. I respond in near real time, just to manage your expectations. It's on the bot. So Robert@Eskimi is my email address. It's right on your screen. My telephone number is 776-004545. So 0045 on MTN, and then 0045 on Airtel. Very simple number there. And then you can check out more about Eskimi on business.eskimi.com. Also, I'm going to share this presentation deck that we have. It's basically, it's about COVID insights that we have at Eskimi, COVID-19 insights that we have at Eskimi for 2019, which is now 2020, because we really caught the virus late here in Uganda, which is a good thing, and we haven't had any deaths. So yeah, so I'm going to share that. It has a very good, very good takeaways, you know, market trends, some of the stuff that has been mentioned on this call. You'll be able to see them. What are we seeing for each of the industries, telecommunications, you know, the restaurant guy. You'll see telecoms, where to focus. You'll see for the banks, what to do. You see for, you know, the FMCGs, where to you know, to put your ear right now. And then, you know, what kind of targeting options can you use as a business? So we have all those here. You know, what apps and sites are people visiting? If you look at Eskimi right now, probably you didn't know this, but we have the highest reach in the market. We reach 7.9 million Ugandans. Now that's 3 times more than any platform. It also means that we have 3 times almost more data than any person out there. And why am I saying this? Because, you know, we're a local company, we're a local company that is global. So we try to get the local insights and then put them into our product. So you'll be able to see stuff like this in your deck. Some of this stuff has been mentioned in the call. You see the targeting options. You know, we're seeing people doing a lot of searches on food, you know, how to sometimes. We're looking at, you know, Seanice mentioned video gaming and other entertainment platforms. News that we have seen has had a big surge in this market. You can see about 2.5 million potential reach in that line. John mentioned, you know, the geolocation and geofencing and geo-targeting. We're really very good on that. And we have a very strong hand in that. So for example, in this campaign that you see here, you'd be able to target hospitals near Kampala and, you know, or people who have visited hospitals near Kampala or shopping malls, the ones that are active and stuff like that. Visited, not who are. So it's a very, very good presentation deck. We'll get a chance to present to some of you individually. And also you'll be able to see the rich media creatives that we have there. I know I've rapped through this, and the best way for you to get more of this is by calling me, contacting me on those numbers. I'll start with John, because he's at the top. John Ssenkeezi. John, how can people reach you? Are you available online, by the way? Are you on Twitter? I know you're now active on TikTok. I saw about 5 videos of you there.
I'm not active on TikTok.
I know.
I rarely also tweet. One of my primary channels is LinkedIn. So you can find me there, John Ssenkeezi. I also do some Facebook from time to time, tuned in privacy, family to friends, and then work and, you know, to the public. So you can also find me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter as well. I'm giving it another shot in 2020, like the president says. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Number 0752 600 581 or 0773 279 474.
I hope it's not an MTN number. I'm not sure if you...
It's both Airtel and MTN.
Where is the variety? Yeah. Okay, so Frank, what do you have for this for us? How can people reach you?
Well, first of all, allow me to say thank you to all our participants. I think it's been an amazing one. Of course, there was quite a number of questions in the Q&A that we probably didn't answer because of time. But like Robert said, I mean, there's always more chance to talk to anyone here. So thank you very much. Of course, Frank Fayo, that's my handle actually across all platforms. Twitter, you just it's Frank Fayo, Facebook, Frank Fayo, of course, LinkedIn, the full name's Frank Fayo Nyakahuma. I'm always open. I love discussions like this because personally, I always look forward to learning, from people that I think have had vast experience. Anyone, I mean, if you want to reach me, my email address is frank@hedgegroup.ug, frank@hedgegroup.ug. My phone number is 774-855-773. I think, Robert, while you send people emails with the content that Seanice is going to share, you can, simply just add. I know people may not be able to remember all these numbers and what, so, but you can share with them. So thank you very much. Thank you, John. I've learned quite a lot, being on the panel with you. Thank you, Seanice. First time we've ever actually had to chat, so it's been amazing. Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Robert, for hosting us, and to all the participants. Stay safe, stay home, do push-ups, get out, and just look at the sun and back in. Social distancing is still a real thing. So all the best. I pray that we keep our mental health in check, because it's very important. People have not talked about it, but stay positive. And we pray that, in time, things will get back to normal. Thank you.
Yeah, so Seanice, Uganda hasn't seen you in like forever, at least publicly. We've only seen you in the newspapers and the like. And many people have told me to remind you that we missed the social media awards, which we should now be calling the digital media awards when they finally come back. And so we want to hear from you. What do you have for us?
I'm reachable all over social media. I promise, I've always been saying this, I will vlog.
People are not used to that word, but the name, the last name. People are used to the Kachungiri name.
Kachingira,
Yeah.
that's right, that's right. Sorry, I was hijacked by a Nigerian, so my name is now Lojede. But yes, I'm all over social media and I'm really happy to help. So if you just Google Seanice Lojede or Seanice Kachingira, my social media will come up, my vlog will come up. I did post my email address, but I believe Robert will be circulating so we can all catch up there. And I think really more important, thank you so much, Robert. This was an amazing, amazing session. Monica has to say something before we go because she said nothing. So I think I'll cede my time to her. But I have nothing to add other than this is the time for us to come together and really just look out for one another more than anything. So if you have any business tips, share freely and widely without the expectation of getting anything back. And I love that through all of this, this is what we're coming back to. It's just those social bonds. So Monica.
So Monica, just a full disclosure. So Monica is a part-time sniper. So she used to be a sniper in her past life. So Monica was our disaster recovery for today. Just in case the call had failed on me, just in case the network hadn't, been good to me like it has been good. I should give kudos to my network provider, whose names I can't mention. Luckily, they're my Eskimi customer, but I can't mention them. They'll have to pay for this ad too. Monica, so do you have any closing remarks for us? And welcome to Uganda, by the way. Welcome to Uganda. I'm sure you've seen quite a lot about us through these conversations.
I just wanted to use this opportunity to thank everybody who took part in this splendid webinar. I mean, I learned in 1 hour and a half a lot of things and got many tips and tricks what we can do together. For the attendees that have been listening to us, I am the marketing manager here at Eskimi. Yes, I was the savior in case the connection with Robert would break today, but I was also present here to listen to those tips that we have all heard, and I will be making like a little advice files or something that we will be able to share with various communities globally. So you would have like a small book, let's say, of advice, what to do in the current situation. So thank you very much for our panelists for sharing very insightful tips. And I'm sure we can all apply them wherever we are working currently in this global situation.
All right, thank you, everyone. We've almost had 100 people, listen to us, and luckily this video will actually be even seen by more people because it will get some of the content will get uploaded out there. But best of all, there's real visible business impact for all the people who have been on this call that they can take away and apply to their business, and that's what I feel is more than humanity. So thank you all, Seanice, for jumping in on this. Frank Fayo. You're, a very active vice president. Normally, we don't have very, very active vice presidents out there, but thank you for taking this by the bull by the horns and jumping in on this. John Ssenkeezi, thank you as well. I thought you'd show up in a red shirt. In fact, I was very sure you'd show up in a red shirt. Thank you for joining us on this one. I think we'll say bye to our participants. If you have any questions, please hit me up on email, hit me up on the phone call, and join me on the next webinar because we have a lot of this coming up, especially with social distancing before we can finally meet, for business and for coffee. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. Take care.